everyone. Welcome to the Silent Podcast, where our focus is to strike out the silenced voices of those affected by sickle cell. I'm Christina Lachelle.
And I'm Ijama Ezene, and we're your hosts.
All right. So before we get into today's episode, which was super dope, let's talk a little bit about the Silent Podcast, because this is our first episode. Ijama, tell us about what this podcast is all about and why do we even name it Silent?
So the podcast really came about with a conversation with the board, trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to continue to advocate for sickle cell and continue to try to get our voices out there, because we really haven't done anything, let's be honest, since 2018 when we had the Ruby Ball. And so with a lot of different things that were going on, me health-wise, I really wasn't able to do anything last year, but I really wanted to get out there this year and start. But 2020 didn't really start off the way that we all expected it to. So
any of us expected
it to. So with that, we really had to take it back and figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Because a lot of the events that we had planned for this year had to be postponed. And with that, Christina was like, I was talking about us doing the whole Voices of Sickle Cell and doing it from the perspective of a blog. And Christina was like, why don't we do it as a podcast? And so that's basically where the whole podcast thing came from. In terms of the name Silent, the reason that we decided to use the name Silent was because that's exactly what sickle cell is. It's a silent illness. It's a silent disease. And those individuals that are living with it, sickle cell doesn't have a face. And so because sickle cell doesn't have a face, people don't know what it means to have sickle cell or what somebody that lives with sickle cell looks like. And so since they don't know what somebody that lives with sickle cell looks like, it ends up being overlooked, right? Because people feel like you're not sick, you know? So with that, we wanted to be able to, like Christina said, strike out the silenced voices of sickle cell. And so that's where the name Silent came from.
Yeah, and I just, Ijama gave about 4 other, when we were brainstorming for names of the podcast, she gave about 4 other options. I was like, no, that one. Like the first one, because we actually couldn't find a name. And then I don't know where it came from, Ijama, but that when I first saw the name Silent, I was like, that's it. That's the name. That's the name of this podcast. So let's talk a little bit about who we are and tell our listeners before we get on to talking about Princess.
Okay, so let's start with you since I just talk a little bit.
Always put me on the spot. So like I said, I'm Christina Lachelle, and I am deeply connected to sickle cell because I have a sister who has sickle cell disease. And so literally for as long as I can remember, I've been at hospital visits, I've been, in hospital rooms, I've been at home with my sister in pain. So I've seen the disease firsthand and experienced it. And when my sister was first diagnosed when she was about 7 years old and I was about 3, I got tested and I tested negative, and so did my mom. My dad didn't get tested, but my sister did, and she came, up with the disease. However, when I was talking to a doctor, I was about, 25, and I was telling my doctor, it doesn't make any sense how my sister has the disease and I don't even have the trait. And she was like, well, let's test and see if there's another, trait that you might have that mimics sickle cell, and maybe that might give some insight into what your sister might have if she doesn't have sickle cell. And so she tested me and I found out that I have the trait.
Wow.
So I guess the tests back when I was 3 were not as good as they are now. And so that was definitely shocking for me to find out later in life that I have sickle cell trait. And I just think about how many people out there might have the trait and not know about it.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm in doing this work. This is why sickle cell is important to me, because I've seen what it's like to have sickle cell. I don't wish that on anyone. And I want to make sure that we create a space where we can bring a voice to those who are silenced, who have sickle cell or who are affected by it.
Yeah. So no, that's good, Christina. So like from my perspective, I actually have sickle cell. And not only do I have sickle cell, but I have a twin brother that has sickle cell, and I have a younger sister who has sickle cell. And then my younger brother has the trait. So growing up, I was I was silent because I didn't know what else to be, because my parents, mainly my mother, did not want me to talk about it, did not want me to let anybody know that I had it. So she didn't talk about it. And so with her not talking about it and her acting like it didn't really exist, it caused me to really not understand what I was dealing with or what I was going through. And it also caused me to kind of be ashamed of it, right? And so being that, growing up as a child, not really understanding, I don't look different than anybody else, I don't sound different than anybody else, but the thing is, like, but I'm in the hospital all the time. I'm not able to do some of the activities that my friends and stuff are able to do, that you would think, looking at me, that I should be able to do. I didn't understand it, right? And so as I continued to grow and as I got older, and just seeing like my sister and how she'd be in pain, because not only did I experience it from the perspective of somebody living with it, I also experienced it as a caregiver, right?
Yeah.
So seeing it from both perspectives and seeing how I would feel wanting to be there for my sister, not being able to do anything, even though I had sickle cell. And it's like, I know how she felt. Seeing her in pain and excruciating
Yeah.
pain hurt me, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, what can I do to try to help you? How can I like make this easier on you, right? And so with that, I just felt, as I continued to, I've always told myself I wanted to do something to try to help those individuals, to try to be a voice, to try to be an advocate. But my fear never allowed me to do that, right? Because I didn't want people to look at me differently. I didn't want people to see me as less than, to see me as weak, because I felt that sickle cell was a weakness, let's be honest, because that's how I was brought up, and that's the way that society tried to portray it, right? And so it's like, when you see people that are living with sickle cell, when people actually show stuff, it's like all you see are people in the hospital beds with the IVs in their arms, grasping and battling this pain. But then it's like, that's not the face or the voice that I wanted to share, right? I wanted to share it from my truth. I wanted to be able to, yes, that is one side of it, but then the other side is you can move through this, right? And
That's
that
right.
you can still be successful. You can still live your dreams. You can still hold a job. You can still travel the world, right? And so being able to be that positive voice in the midst of all the negativity is part of where this came from.
And I love how you say, how you talk about your fear and how your fear wouldn't allow you to do it, because our guest today, Princess Sharika, one of the things I loved about today's conversation is how she talked about how she rises above fear to get where she is. And she's done a lot of advocacy work. She's written a book. She has some flashcards coming out soon. So I was just really impressed and honored to hear her story. What did you like about today's conversation?
Well, what did I not like about today's conversation?
Yeah.
It was real, it was transparent, it was real, but then it being transparent and real, it was something that still was positive and showed strength. And that's what I really liked about it, was that you don't have to show somebody in a weak position to be able to show what they're battling and what they're dealing with, right? You can still be able to show their strength and how they overcome, but then in the same breath be able to understand like what they're dealing with or what they're going through, right? And how it's helped to push them to be the person that they are today, right? So, and that kind of like brings me to our voice of truth quote that we have for the day. So one of my favorite quotes that I feel like speaks to me in terms of sickle cell is, sometimes the strongest amongst us are the ones who smile through silent pain, cry behind closed doors, and fight battles that nobody knows about. And so that's something that when I first started the Ruby Ball, that legit, I was like, that's it, right? So I wanted to use that as a way for us to really introduce our podcast and what we'll be talking about today.
I love that quote. I really love that quote. And I think that beyond sickle cell, there are some other people who can just relate to, you know, wanting to speak out and not having a voice. So, good one.
Yes.
All right. Well, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's interview. Our guest today, her name is Princess Sharika, and she is super dope. So listen up. And at the end of our podcast, we'll have some more information about how you can get connected with her.
Awesome. Thank you.
And here's a quick message from our sponsor.
So we would like to introduce Princess Sharika to you. Bringing wellness to the community she serves, Princess Sharika is a community health worker who partners with various organizations in the fight against sickle cell. She also holds an Associate of Science in Biology degree from Blinn College. For approximately 6 years, Princess served the health industry by advocating for individuals facing sickle cell disease. She left her mark by producing literary tools and resources that would allow sickle cell patients to find their way through the health industry. Princess has been able to leverage her prior experiences in order to identify what exactly drives conversations concerning the advancement of sickle cell. With the launching of Super Cells and respective interviews to follow, she has mastered the art of creating valuable relationships with the audience she is trying to reach. Simultaneously, being able to communicate her understandings back to said audience has been a driving factor of her success. Princess has been featured in the Dallas Voyage magazine and has been involved with the Sickle Cell Consortium and Carol's Promise. Her book, Super Cell, has been featured in Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, Target, and Melanin Origins. Princess strives to continue linking the fighting battle that most don't understand to the healthcare tools and resources available for their use. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Princess Sharika.
Hey, Princess.
Hi.
You know, that's a powerful bio and background, just to hear like what you've been doing towards the fight of sickle cell and what we have going on. So if you could describe your sickle cell journey in one word, what would that be?
Conqueror.
Conqueror. I like that.
That was the first one that came to my mind. I had another word, but
no, that's good. Conqueror. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I really love that word. I see like immediately I see like a arm, like I am
warrior.
Right, with the concept of the sickle cell warrior and the process of how your life has grown or how you've been through this process and through this battle. So Christina, did you want to begin?
Yeah, I mean, so we heard Princess's bio, right? But like, Ijama, what connected you to Princess, and how, like, what brought you to say, like, we need to have her on this podcast as our first guest?
Just so Princess just reached out. She was like, hey, what are y'all doing in terms of how can I get involved, right, with what y'all have going on? And so from there, I like went and looked at her page. I'm like, oh, she wrote a book for kids on sickle cell. And it was like just looking at the things that she was doing on her page, I was like, she looks like she has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And so I came back to the group and I was like, I think I found the first guest. and so I shared the background and I was like, yeah. So what were you going to say, Christina?
No, I was going to say the moment for me was when then she sent me the link, Princess, to your Instagram. And I went scrolling and Insta stalking. And, but you have this picture and you're in the hospital and there's a quote underneath of it. And it says, none of my fears can go where I'm headed. And that was just so powerful to me. Tell us more about that, like what that means to you.
That means that I mean, every time I go to the hospital, I'm scared. Like, I don't care how many times I go because I know, like, there's a chance that I won't make it out. And then on that day, like, I was so over the doctors. They were getting on my nerves. I think I had, like, 5 bags of saline, and I was still dehydrated. I said, you know what? None of my fears can go where I'm going. So I just kind of got myself to stop worrying about it and just was like, it is what it's gonna be. Either I'm gonna live, I'm gonna die. But I just chose to live, and I was just like, I'm not gonna let this defeat me. Like, just because I have sickle cell doesn't mean that I'm gonna be stuck in this hospital for the rest of my life. So I was like, whatever, I'm gonna kick sickle cell butt, and I'm gonna leave this hospital, and I'm not coming back.
And I
that's
love
the idea. I don't want to go back to the hospital ever again, but I was just so over it.
Yeah, and I love that. So just also living with sickle cell and knowing that whole thing of trying to continue to be strong through the pain, right? And so that was, like Christina said, very powerful when you said, like, none of my fears can go where I'm going. And so with that, and just again, with bringing you on to this podcast, that was one of the things that I felt was powerful, because that's what we're trying to do through this whole silent podcast, is have that voice for those individuals that are living with sickle cell that may have been told, or that may feel that sickle cell is supposed to be, is a weakness for them, you know? Mm-hmm. But as opposed to that, showing it as your strength and being able to push through those obstacles, push through those things that may have come to try to hinder you, to try to keep you from going where you need to be going. And it's like, I'm like, God has me going somewhere that my fears, they're not coming with me. You know, so the things that are trying to hold me back, the things that are trying to keep me from achieving my goals, the things that are trying to keep me from being the person that God has called me to be, I'm not even going to allow that to happen in my life. I'm going to continue to thrive. I'm going to continue to move forward. And so that in itself was powerful, because that's exactly what I wanted for this podcast. When we talk about being a voice in the silence and being a voice for those individuals that aren't heard, that feel as though they're, that their illness is keeping them from being able to move forward, to grow, to do various things, by seeing people like you that are writing books to try to help children to better understand their ailments and understand their illness, so that they can be educated, so that they can talk to the doctors and let them know about what they're dealing with. Because that's one thing that we find out too, is that a lot of the doctors aren't as educated when it comes to talking about sickle cell, or things that affect us, right? And so it's like, what better advocate is there to have than yourself? So no, I feel you.
Yeah, there's definitely something about, like, when I saw that, I was like, she knows how to, like, rise above, like, whatever is coming her way. And I think that, you know, this is a podcast where we're focusing on, you know, those affected by sickle cell, but I think that even those who are not affected by sickle cell can learn something, you know, from like how you deal with fear. So, like, if you were to, like, give a word of advice for, like, people who are dealing with fear, what would you say to them? Like, how do you rise above fear?
Perseverance. That's the other word I was trying to think of. For me, it was just, when I was in high school, like, I was so scared. I didn't want to tell nobody, because it wasn't nobody like me. Yeah, I would go to camp in the summertime, but for 2 months, that's it. I'm around people like me. But when I was in, like, high school, you know, elementary, it was nobody like me. So nobody really knew I had it, but, like, my immediate family. And still some of my, like, I guess, extended family that don't even really know or understand what I go through. And so when I got to college, and I was like, so mad that nobody talked about it. I was like, why don't nobody talk about it? So that's when I said, I'm going to do it. And it was just being honest with myself. And I'm just like, just because I have sickle cell doesn't mean anything, or just because it's not typical or common for, like, normal, or what normal looks like, doesn't mean anything. And then once I let go of that fear, like, I don't let anything stop what I'm doing.
No, I love that. And so I like how you started off too by saying, growing up, you didn't feel there was anybody that knew what you were going through, or that understood what you were dealing with. So I'll even bring it to, like, my story. I remember being in elementary school, and us having PE and having to, like, run, and the PE coach would wouldn't understand and would try to push me to the same extent that they were doing everybody else, right? And I'm like, I can't breathe. Like, I can't keep going. But then it's like, because of that stigma of like, okay, what's wrong with you? Because you don't look like anything. Like, you look fine. So I don't understand why you can't do what everybody else is doing. Like, I don't understand why you're not able to finish this these 5 laps around the school. But it's like, that's one of the things too that I've seen. So I feel like it's a disconnect in terms of understanding, like, yes, we need to be able to put ourselves out there to show, like, I'm not different. I can achieve my goals. I can do what everybody else can do. And then also within ourselves, being able to have that understanding of not feeling less than, you know what I mean? Just because you're not able to do stuff. So it's like, sometimes we might take it to the point of like trying to overexert ourselves or you know what I mean? Like, do things because we feel like we need to overcompensate because you want to be seen as better, you know what I mean? Like, stronger. You don't want to be deemed as less than or weaker than because of the illness that you have. And so I feel like that whole dynamic is something that I feel there needs to be a conversation around, because again, there is no real face to sickle cell. And so with there not really being a face to sickle cell, you look just like anybody else out there, anybody else around, but then having that understanding of, okay, there is no face to sickle cell, but in the same breath, I need to be able to understand and see, like, there are other people around me who may have the same things that I felt, that I was the only person dealing with it, or I was the only person going through that, so that I can talk to these different people, so I can see that there are people like me out there who are also dealing with this. And because there is no face to the illness, that means that I'm not alone. And so having that feeling of like, I'm not alone, so I can feel more confident and comfortable in sharing my story. I can feel more confident and comfortable in talking about those issues that I was dealing with, that I felt that somebody would look at me in a different light. But if other people are more vocal about those things and more vocal about trying to persevere and move forward with that, that will bring other people together to be able to do those things as well.
Yeah. Totally agree.
You know, as you were talking, Idrama, you said something really early on that triggered a thought process in my mind. And you said, I can't breathe. And it's, for those of you all who are listening to the podcast, today is June 6th. And when we release this, it will be June 19th, also known as Juneteenth. And there's a lot going on in our country right now that calls for us to be advocates for ourselves. And I would really love to hear, Princess, about how you've been an advocate in sickle cell, but I just want to kind of pause and acknowledge that, like, there is so much going on in this country that is, you know, disproportionately affecting Black people, specifically people of color. But we're seeing so many people come together and advocate for, you know, Black Lives Matter, and advocate for or against police brutality. And I wish, like, I hope for the day where people come together and advocate for like this against sickle cell. What are you guys thinking about, right? When it comes to like just thinking about what's happening in the news and how it kind of connects to sickle cell.
And
I think
I'll let you go.
I think that it's great because, you know, there are changes that are happening. I think it's sad that it's been almost 500 years and we still having to do the same thing. There's no right or wrong way to advocate because there's no rule book for it. What pertaining to what's going on today, it's amazing how people can come together, even people of, you know, different nationalities, different countries, and they're all, you know, protesting for Black Lives Matter. The social construct is broke. Not that there was ever a social construct, but it's just all these deviant behaviors, and people are upset, they're tired, and I feel like people have the right to feel how they feel, and they need to feel those things so they don't have to keep it inside and be angry. Because we're not angry, we're just tired. And I understand that, because as it relates to sickle cell, I'm 26 and I've just been, oh my God, I've been to Capitol Hill, I've been to Washington, I've been all around the country, and it goes down to the educational institution, because it's like a state thing. Like each state has their own set of education systems and things like that. What we were trying to do in the organization that I'm in is just have one big whole umbrella and like everybody follows it. But when you're a doctor, you have the final say, so you can do it or you don't have to do it. So it's very hard, and sometimes it's very discouraging because people don't care. And that's just what it comes down to. They don't really care about sickle cell. Sickle cell is one of the oldest diseases, and I think we have 4 FDA approved drugs now. I think. Don't quote me on that. I think it's only 4. And one of the drugs, they give the same drug to leukemia patients. So it's kind of not really just a drug particularly for us. So it's just, it's very hard. We have to fight so hard, and we have to do above and beyond than any other disease. And it's just like, it sucks.
And it's
I
like,
get tired of advocating.
Right. It took somebody literally like having someone else have their neck on someone's neck for people to start caring. And it's like, what will it take for people to start caring about sickle cell? Because, you can't disconnect it. For me, I can't disconnect it from race, right? Like if this were not a Black disease, or not, African Americans disproportionately affected by this disease, would people care a little bit more about it? You know what I mean? Like I can't disconnect it.
I can't disconnect.
That's true.
And what's crazy is the fact that World Sickle Cell Day is June 19th and it falls on Juneteenth, right? And it's just like the dynamic of that and showing like that connection, because this is a disease that disproportionately affects our people, right? And so the fact that it affects Black people more than anything, but at the same time, it affects over 100,000 individuals in the United States alone, right? Millions of people around the world, but it still doesn't have the following, or, the people that actually are looking to try to help advocate for this illness, or help, like push the needle, right? To where we can be able to get what we need in order to help, in order to help those individuals that need it. Because one of the things too, because now it's like, okay, why don't you just go get a stem cell transplant, right? Or why don't you just go, do this? Because like everything, because at the end of the day, there's still no universal cure for sickle cell. So there are some things that have come out, but it's not right for everybody. And so that's the thing that they have to understand. Like some people that have gone through the process of, doing the stem cell transplant, it wasn't right for them. And they ended up coming out with even greater complications than they did if they just went ahead and just continued to live their life, having these crises. And so just being able to see, like, how can we get to a point where we're able to have our voice be heard, right? So have our voice be heard, have the backing behind us so that we can be able to continue to push the needle, move forward, be able to show that, Black Lives Matter. Like that goes back to the whole thing, like, the sickle cell voice matters, that is part of the Black voice. And so where are we going to go in terms of healthcare advocacy for people of color as we continue to look at the different ways that we need to advocate for people that are being disproportionately, marginalized? Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I think first we would have to get an accurate number, because the CDC, there's nobody counting the different cases of sickle cell patients.
Right.
So that number is not accurate. I know when we went to Washington, I think we went in February, that was one of the bills that we wanted to get passed, is to allocate funding so the CDC can have an accurate number, because there's way more than 100,000 Americans.
No, and that's
way more than 100,000 Americans that are affected by sickle cell disease. There's nobody counting. It's just you get diagnosed, and that it is what it is. There's no okay, well,
that doesn't include people with a trait like me, where I didn't find out I had the trait until I was in my 20s, and so like, what about those people too? Because we're counting the people who have that, sickle cell disease, but we haven't even thought about those people who have the trait.
And then just even going back to the grouping of sickle cell and knowing there are different types of sickle cell, but everybody's grouped into a box. And growing up the whole time, I thought I had SS. But at the age of 36 or 35, last year is when I found out that I actually have, baby thalassemia or whatever. I didn't know that growing up, right? I just thought sickle cell was sickle cell. And so that's part of the reason too that I'm very excited about what you're doing with the book that you're writing, Sickle-Cell, because it allows you at a younger age to have a better understanding of the illness, because I didn't really understand sickle cell growing up. I didn't know what was going on. I just felt like I can't run. Like I wanted to run track. Everybody talked about how long my legs were. You should be running track. Like I wanted to do it too, but then I'd get on that track and I'd be like,
I can't do this.
Like what's going on? And so it's like, I just did not understand. And I was like, why? Like, why me? And so it's like not having that understanding. And then just even going back to what we talk about on how people, like even nurses, even doctors, when you go to the hospital and it comes to the, the medication, because it's like when you're having a pain crisis, there's nothing that you can do but let the pain, but allow the pain to pass and like certain pain medication in order to be able to help you, be okay with that pain or like maintain that pain. But then it's like people that have sickle cell end up being classified as drug addicts. And it's like, why? But then if you go to the hospital and there's somebody of another nationality that may need that same pain medication, they're not going to ask them questions. But they'll ask those individuals that have sickle cell questions. But why? Is it because of the group that it affects the most?
Yeah, that's the reason. You have doctors and healthcare professionals going on record saying that, they believe Black people less, especially Black women less, in the hospital when they say that they're in pain. Yeah, for whatever reason, they feel like you can just take all of this pain and just be okay. And, that system is broke. Like the institution is broken. And this has been going on just like with police. Healthcare professionals are the same way. I didn't have many problems growing up, but when I got older and I moved to a smaller town, they was calling me drug addicts and all types of things. And that's when I learned about NPI numbers, the National Physician Identification Number. I would report their numbers. Like, you're not going to treat me like I'm less than anything because you feel like I'm not in pain. Like, you can't measure pain because everybody deals with pain differently. So it's like, there's not a scale. They say they 1 from 10. You can't determine that, especially if you're having a sickle cell crisis. Like, I because this should be a different scale.
My 10 could be like your 3, right?
Yeah. That's one thing that people don't understand, because that's what like my friends will say in terms of like my threshold for pain is very, very high. And so if I can not take something, I'm going to wait to the like last possible moment. So if I ask for pain medicine, if I need some Dilaudid or whatever, I am in excruciating pain. I'm in excruciating pain. And the fact that it takes you time to really say, okay, to give me that. And it's like, you don't know the pain that I'm in. I had a friend that told me her sister, like they have a cousin that has sickle cell, and her sister told her, I don't believe her. She doesn't look like she's in pain. She doesn't look like she has sickle cell. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about what does sickle cell look like? What is the face of sickle cell?
I don't know. There is no face because there's different genotypes, and different genotypes experience things differently. And the males, like they go through something that we don't have to go through. So it's like, you just can't determine that. And like somebody who wrote the textbook for sickle cell, that one little paragraph that we do have, determined that the SS genotype has it the worst. And I do not agree with that at all. There's nobody being held accountable for that. So it's just a lot of work to be done. This is a big task that I've decided to take on. I don't know why I did it, because I'm just like, oh, this is too much, because there's so many different layers. You get through one layer, then it's like 20 on top of that layer to get to the top, and it's a lot.
But you're
You know, but
overwhelming sometimes.
they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that though it looks insurmountable, there are small things that you are doing to eat that elephant.
Right. And it goes back to like that quote that I like by Mother Teresa, where it says, like, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone to create a ripple.
Yeah.
And so it's like you cast that stone and it creates that ripple effect. And then other people will start to see that, and other people will start to come and join that process or join that movement. But I really want to get back to your book, get back to the whole concept of what made you say, I want to write a book, right? For children. And what are you looking to achieve, or what do you want to get out of this book?
Well, I used to volunteer at Cook's Children's Hospital in Dallas and the Ronald McDonald House. And I would be with the Sickle-Cell kids and Sickle-Cell family. I just naturally gravitate to them. And they would ask me, what is Sickle-Cell like? They say I have this, but what is it? And I would just go back to the textbook definition that I have, and they looking at me like, what is that? And I'm like, you don't understand that? And I said, I tried to break it down like so simple, and they just like, no, what is that? And so I was just like, it has to be a way that kids can understand this, because I don't feel that it's okay for you to go to the doctor with your child that has sickle cell, and they just sitting there looking at you and the doctor like, what y'all talking about? Like, I know y'all talking about me, but I don't understand it. And so one day I was at Macy's, I was working at Macy's, and I grabbed some receipt paper and I just started writing on the back of a receipt paper, and it just came to me. People don't believe me when I say that, but that's literally how it happened. I never would, when I was little, like, oh my God, when I get big, I'm writing a book. No. I didn't think of that. I had no idea on how to write a book. It is very difficult. Even though it's a children's book, it's just a lot of things I did not know as far as what goes into writing a children's book. And that was just like the first literary device that I created for children, because they have so many questions. Like, children are curious. Like, I don't care what nobody say. Children are very curious. They're like, oh my God, like, what is that? You know, what is electrophoresis? Like, what does that determine? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make this easier for y'all, because when I was a kid, I didn't know what the heck was going on. Like, I just knew I had to go to the doctor. I knew I didn't feel good, but I didn't know why I didn't feel good. I didn't know what type of sickle cell I had. I didn't know I had to have like all these different doctors. I had to have a primary care, a hematologist, neurologist, oncologist, like all these different doctors. I'm like, why? Like, none of my friends
Not even
have
to
these
interrupt you,
doctors.
I didn't have a hematologist until I moved to Virginia at the age of 30 years old. Like, I always had a primary care. My primary care was my was my hematologist. My childhood doctor, that was my primary care, was what did everything. And so that just shows to the extent of the importance of like having those different doctors be able to have a better understanding of what's going on. So didn't mean to interrupt you, but no, that's very true.
That's important. So I was just like, I know that people, like, kids have it easy. Kids does not have it easy, because if their parents don't know, then how can they teach their child? And so for me, like, I want to create a literary dictionary to teach them health literacy and health equity at a younger age, because for me, I didn't stop seeing my pediatrician until I was like 21. Technically, you can still see them up to 24, but they try to kick you out at like 18. And I just feel like a lot of patients aren't prepared for that transition, and they lose touch with their doctors. There's not a universal transition program for like all the United States, you know, all different cities, states, you know, across the nation, so that they can be prepared for the next step, because it's hard. You go from sunshine, rainbows to gray walls. Literally, it is not the same. They don't care enough like how they did, you know, on the children's side. And so that's important to me, so that people can have a better transition process. And then like that builds confidence. Once you know and understand what you have, it's easier to talk about it, and it's easier to explain to somebody else. And that's what I want to do.
And that's why your fears can't go where you're going.
Yeah, because
that's exactly what it is. It's like, just like you just said about, you build more confidence, right? As you better understand, as you have more knowledge, you gain more confidence. And as you gain more confidence, then you have more faith. And as you know what I mean, you're moving away from fear. And it's like, there's nothing for you to be afraid of because you have the knowledge to understand it.
Yeah.
And that helps to help you grow and helps you to move forward. So.
Yeah, that's really important. Because a lot of my friends, they're adults and they don't have hematologists. They just go to the hospital and they're treated for their pain, but they have underlying issues. I have a friend in the hospital. She's been in and out of ICU. She's about 32, I think, and she doesn't have a hematologist. She has lung issues, she has heart issues, and nobody is treating her. Nobody is following her. But she goes to the hospital and they just treat her for her pain. And I tried to get her to understand that, yes, they're going to treat you for your pain. They want to get you well enough to go home. They're not going to make sure you're 100%.
And
they got other patients.
One of the things that you touched on was something that's very huge that people don't understand. Sickle cell is not just about the pain, right? And so it's like, because of the way that sickle cell affects people with the flow of blood and oxygen, it ends up affecting you in your organs. You know what I mean? And people have organ failure and organ damage due to to their sickle cell crises and the multiple sickle cell crises that they have, and having a better understanding of that and how that affects people and how it creates more underlying issues to where people have kidney failure, like have lung issues,
even eye issues.
Yes.
Have different things different things that it ends up creating other health problems, and people need to have a better understanding of that. So it's like, if you can get to the root of the problem, then that would be another way of being able to help people. And outside of that, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, the way that it affects people that have sickle cell, just again, because then it goes again to the whole thing that we were talking about earlier with not wanting to be seen as weak. And so if you don't want to be seen as weak, and then people sit and say you don't look like you're sick or you don't look a certain type of way, then it makes it hard for you to vocalize your pain and vocalize what you're dealing with and what you're going through, because you don't want anybody to see you as less than. And so with that, you start internalizing stuff, and then you feel that you don't want to be open and honest about what you're dealing with because there's nobody to talk to. Right. And so goes as adults, as you move and you go into work, and it's like, you don't want it to affect your job because you don't want people to feel as though you can't do your work because of the pain or what you're dealing with, because again, you look normal, so they can't tell that you're, dealing with something because it's not something that's written on your face. So just being able to get past that, and I feel like that's where the whole advocacy comes in, and that's where it comes back to people having a better understanding of the illness, not just people in the sickle cell community, but everybody worldwide, and so as people, just the same way that they have a better understanding and people are really getting behind breast cancer and getting behind cancer and things like that, and we have the Susan G. Como walk, being able to find that unifying force for sickle cell, right? So that you can be able to really put that out there, and that it's not something that people feel that I can't be open about because nobody gets it, right? And then also being able to be that face and be that voice so that other people that are dealing with it, they're able to feel more confident and more open for them to also talk about what they may be dealing with, to where that can help us to be able to now find, people want to put money in backing things so that we can find that cure that's universal, that can help everybody without causing other underlying health issues, for us to be able to come together and be able to, support those individuals that may not be able to get the treatment or get the help that they need, and know that they have somewhere that they can go to that can help them get through this, So what are the things that we can try to do, and how can we continue to try to advocate so that it goes beyond the sickle cell community, right?
What I suggested is that people be more honest,
right?
With themselves as far as what they go through. I know for me, like, I felt like I had to be an overachiever. I felt like people would always have a leg up on me. So I had to be the best in academics. I had to be the best in anything that I felt like I was doing. And that gets really tiring. Like, when I was a freshman in college, I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure my clothes was good, my face was good, my hair was done, just so I can look like I feel good. And I was just like, I look back and I was like, why was I getting up that early? Like, it was so much sleep I missed out on. And I just think that I didn't want people to think I was weak, and I would minimize my pain so that people around me won't go like,
Girl,
oh,
you speaking
I
to
hope you
me.
feel good. Oh my God, I wish if you ever need anything, let me know. I wish I could help you. You cannot help me, and that's okay. It's okay if you cannot help me. It's fine. You don't have to lie to me. And it was just when I started going to therapy, I recommend everybody go to therapy because it literally changed my life. It made me become more honest about how I feel. And, I just didn't care if people saw me as weak. I know I'm not weak because me just getting out of bed some days is a good day. And that's like a triumph for me because I don't always want to get up when I don't feel good. But I get up so that people can see, yeah, I don't feel good, but I'm going to keep on going.
Yep.
Because I know that people like look up to me, and I didn't realize that, I was just doing things because I wanted my voice to be heard. But people was like, okay, you can do it, so can I. And a lot of people would come to me in like private and like, oh, I have sickle cell, but I don't want nobody to know. I'm like, why? Like, I want everybody to know I have sickle cell because sickle cell has never looked as good ever.
Yes, girl. Let them know.
Let them know. But see, just exactly what you said. And so I don't know if you're aware. So the whole creation and the whole purpose of me coming up with the Ruby Ball was because I had a friend who was dealing and who was living with sickle cell. She passed in 2017 from pulmonary embolism. And so prior to her passing in September, September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And so me and her had a conversation. It was funny because Christina was in the car with me.
Sure
right?
was, yeah.
And so we were driving to go to a sickle cell advocacy event September 1st. And so my friend, she called me. I hadn't talked to her in a while prior to that, but she's one of the people that that actually got me to better understand sickle cell, and that got me to actually become more open and honest about what I was dealing with and what I was living with, because I was one of those people that I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want anybody to see me as weak or less than, or feel that I was making excuses when something was happening in my life, right? And so not having an understanding, and then not feeling that there was anybody that I could really talk to. And so I met Ebony like in college. And so having somebody that, that looked like me, that, was educated, that was doing their thing, going, getting their master's, getting their doctor, like getting out there and really like trying, and seeing that was helpful. So we were able to talk with one another. When she was at the hospital, she needed somebody to vent to, she would call me to talk, to talk through some things. But one of the things that came out of our conversation on that day on September 1st is that, because it was also around the time of Harvey in Houston, right? And so she was just talking about, like, after living through that, like being more like vocal, right? And being able to see like, okay, what can I do in order to help other people and try to like be out there. One of the things she wanted to do was write a book. And then with the book that she wanted to write, it was in order to be a voice for sickle cell and like have different people that are successful, different people that are doing positive things, that are living their goals, to be able to share their stories, right? And so that by hearing those stories and seeing all these people come together collectively to see, like, yes, there is no face to sickle cell. And yes, like, it's not always about being in the hospital with the IV in your arm, sick, and showing that's the way that you need to gain advocacy, is by showing like people sick in the hospital. But then being able to help also those people who are those individuals, by them seeing somebody that looks like them, Yes, I may be struggling. Yes, I may be, crying silent tears or whatever that you may not see, but I'm still thriving, right? And so she wanted to do that. And so that was the whole thing of trying to write that book. And so that's something we were talking about. But then she ended up passing in October. And so with her passing in October, I told myself, I was like, I can't let that conversation go. Like, we talked about being able to come together and like really put our voice out there. And it's like, John, you're gonna have to push past that fear, of people knowing like what you're dealing with and looking at you a certain type of way. Because it's like, it's not a weakness, And so it's like being able to push through that and push past that. So other people, you can be that voice for other people. And so with that was birthed the Ruby Ball, right? And so that's when I said, I have to do this. I didn't even live in the country. I was living out of the country at that time, but I was like, I have to do this, right? And so I hosted the first Ruby Ball in 2018, in October of 2018. And it had so, you know what I mean? Like there was so much love like from there. And so I was just like, this is what, you know what I mean? Like what I need to do. And then like, I'll just, you know what I mean? This is what Ebony was talking about. And so just even with us doing this podcast and those voices, Christina pointed out, she was like, you know how Ebony said she wanted to write that book about voices of sickle cell and people like talking and sharing their stories through this podcast? That's what we're doing, you know? And so just bringing that whole thing full circle.
Yep. And maybe it's not a book.
Right? And like I said, it's not a book.
Know,
like, this is.
But we're getting voices to be heard. And that's, you know, it was just happenstance that I was in the car at the time that you had that conversation with her, and just hearing her passion behind, you know, really wanting people to share their voices. I'm so, and having a sister who has sickle cell, I'm just really proud to be part of this work. And it just so happened that we have a coronavirus, right? And we can't have the Ruby Ball this year. And so we were like, well, what can we do to make sure that we're still doing the work? And so, you know, that's how we ended up here. But it's, you know, I don't believe that things just kind of happen out of nowhere, right? Like, I feel like God has orchestrated all of these things to happen. And I'm just happy to be here with y'all.
Right. It goes back to people talking about canceling 2020. 2020 isn't canceled.
It's not canceled.
It's a time to like really just evaluate and really like look at things and just look at the change in the world. Like, who would have thought we would be where we are now? Yeah. Right?
Not me.
Where exactly who would have thought we would be where we are now?
Not
like
me.
Literally people from all over the world, you know, not just the United States, but are all joining. Where it even said like with the protests, all 50 states, you know, there were protests all over. Like this is showing there's change, you know, like we're getting to a new level. So it's like, don't look at it from the perspective of the negativity of the things happening, but look at how those negative things that are happening are creating a positive change, right?
Yeah. I think about the bamboo plant. I've been having a lot of conversations about race and social justice at work. And, you know, some of my coworkers are asking like, why now? But I think about the bamboo plant, you plant the bamboo plant and then it does not rise up above the ground for 5 years. So you just working in faith, you watering the plant, hoping that something will happen, like hoping that those seeds are growing underground. And then one day it just shoots up, right? And so I think that this moment is a lot like that, where it's like, we've been advocating for social justice for such a long time. We've been advocating for sickle cell for such a long time. When is going to be our bamboo moment, right? That we just kind of come up out of the ground and everybody sees what's happening and everybody realizes like, oh, this is a thing, right? Because until that bamboo comes up, you just kind of hope that somebody's going to see it and hope that somebody's going to realize what's going on.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good analogy.
I think that's a good way for us to close this podcast. But Princess, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for appeasing us and coming on to this podcast. I know that you shared what your one word was earlier, and so just if we could close with that expression on why you chose that word, right, and how that really like represents who you are.
Conqueror, just all the stuff that I had to go through. Like, it's been a roller coaster from the time I was born till where I am now. I just felt like it was hard. It was so hard when I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know like if I was gonna make it. I've had strokes, brain tumors, like all types of things. And if I would have listened to what doctors told me, then I would be dead like years ago. And I felt like I conquered my fear. Well, I'm conquering the rest of them, but
That's
for
right.
that fear of life, I was scared to be outside my bubble. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm going to get sick. I can't go over here because I'm going to get sick and things like that. And I was just like, that's not going to stop me. And once I let that go, I just felt like I'm conquering everything that I felt like I couldn't do. I just do it. And even if I can't do it, I'm going to keep on trying. And that's what conquering means to me.
I love
that was
it.
really important.
Love that. Love that.
Love it. But yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Again, just we'll continue to advocate for sickle cell. Thank you for everything that you're doing for those out there. Look forward to continuing to connect with you to the agenda forward. So this will not be our last conversation. So
and before you go, do you want to drop any websites or whatever that we should go to find the things that you've been working on, specifically your book or other things?
Oh yeah, sorry. I do have a book.
Yes.
Available at Barnes & Noble, in store or online, Amazon, and I'll be launching in Target on September 18th.
Yes.
So I'm really excited about that.
Tell us again.
Sorry, the name of my book is Sickle-Cells. I took back the negative connotation with sickle cell and I named them super cells.
Love that.
The book is about a little girl who has sickle cell and she turns into a superhero from having sickle cell. So like she's not just the sick kid in the hospital, she's a superhero. And that was important. And I have flashcards dropping June 19th on World Sickle Cell Day. It's
the same day as this podcast, so make sure y'all pick it up.
Make sure you have children or just whether they have sickle cell trait, or unrelated to sickle cell, it's really important that they know health literacy so they have a better understanding. Those are really important. So be on the lookout for that.
Share your social media, like where are you on Facebook, Instagram, like where can we connect with you?
Oh, y'all are so professional. My Instagram is princess_fresh, the letter C. And Supercell's book is my book page for the book, and Princess Sharika on Facebook. And none of my pages are private, and I do follow back, so y'all don't have to worry about that.
Great.
Okay.
And we'll leave all that information in the show notes so that you can access that for those of you who are listening.
Thank you guys for having me. This was great, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you
for joining us. We appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Princess.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.